How's it going, everybody? David Griscom here, broadcasting to you live from the city of Austin, Texas. Hope you're doing all right wherever you are, considering all the circumstances and things that are going on. I'm happy to be here. I love these streams for people who are new. These are a little bit more casual than the main program. They're interactive. So feel free to jump in the chat with any questions or comments. We do appreciate super chats very much. But we love hearing from everyone. If you aren't using a super chat, please put at left reckoning so it's a little bit easier for me to see it. I'm sure we're going to talk a little bit more about Palestine and the human slaughter in Gaza, and amongst some other things. I have a Texas story that I definitely want to share with y'all. But maybe to get us started, make sure that I'm not missing any early questions that we got in here. These are always best when we got a lot of things in the chat. So first one here we have is from Charles. Charles's Ghost. He says, Dave, are there any holes in the UAW contracts that you're aware of? Well, I'll say first and foremost that this contract is truly exceptional, and it's a huge win for organized labor, for the labor movement in the United States. And I just don't think you should start any conversation until you sort of establish that this is something that's truly an incredible victory for not only for the UAW workers but also for setting up a much more large scale and stronger and more militant labor movement in this country. Don't forget that not only is this already having effects, we're seeing union activities in Tesla facilities, for example. We've already seen companies like Toyota get nervous and raising benefits and pay for people, because the argument is extremely clear to anyone with a brain. If you want a better life, you got to be in the union. And the hope here is that this massively expands the labor movement in the U.S. Because it's not just in the auto industry where this is having ripple effects. As people remember, one of the most exciting things I thought in the announcement of this tentative agreement, which again will be voted on by the membership. People get really confused about that, and a lot of, in my opinion, bad actors, people who try to talk radical, but are oftentimes too ignorant to really understand what they're talking about, and oftentimes uh, operate as more as figures trying to destabilize and delegitimize the labor movement, right? Which there's plenty of criticisms to make about a lot of labor strategy out there. But if you're coming into it not from a place of good faith and trying to operate and strong and strengthen the labor movement, but rather just sort of tear down things that you don't really understand, aren't a part of, I don't really trust your convictions. Anyways, that preamble. Are there holes? I mean, I think even boosters of the deal will say, there's some things they wish they could have gotten more of. They were able to severely weaken the tier system. It didn't abolish it completely in this contract. Um, so I think that that's one aspect that people would like to see more. But there's always more that can be won. The fact is, though, is that this deal exceeded most people's expectations going into this contract negotiation, and I mean it's going to expire in 28, um, right? 28 or is it 25? Um, so there's a huge opportunity here to expand and win more for people. But I mean, look, yeah, the tiers, everyone wanted to abolish the tiers. They were able to significantly scale a lot of them back. They were able to put people on fast track to full time work, and things of that nature, particularly in the Ford contract, which is the other one I've been able to really spend time looking at. From my understanding, the other contracts are fairly similar um, to the one that was announced at Ford. So yeah, they weren't able to abolish tiers in their entirety, but they're able to scale back tiers and also fast track people into full time employment. So I hope that answers your question there. Our good friend here, Lurda, says, "Any update on the music dispute?" No, no update on the music dispute. For people who missed it, we've had another run in with the UPM CG, who has sort of made a habit now of trying to make copyright claims against Left Reckoning, and they were claiming that music you just heard was derivative of the new Trolls movie with Justin Timberlake. Pretty bizarre if you actually listen to the song. But we win every time they do dispute against us. We win. The thing that's frustrating is it pulls our monetization for that period, which can go up to like 45 days. So it's always a very frustrating thing when that happens. But we usually send an email and a response, and they have so long to respond to it, and then they usually just don't ever challenge it. Um, it's a joke. YouTube really needs to fix this process because it's hurting us. It hurts a lot of other people. I mean, this is music that we own. This is music that's recorded for us. And the if and the thing that's annoying about it too is it's very clear. This is my opinion. I don't know for sure, but it's very clear that this thing is automated. Whoever's making these claims against us, because no reasonable person would hear the fucking intro song from Trolls the movie. I just can't say that again. I think that that sounds in any way like our song. Not to mention the fact that we've owned this music before. Trolls the movie was a glimmer in some movie executive's eye. And from Comrade Sensor Maria says, "Hello, family, solidarity, and immediate ceasefire in Palestine. That is the demand. End the occupation and ceasefire now." And we can talk about that a little bit more in just a second. Let me make sure I'm not missing any chats before we get into some of these other stories here. Joshua says, General Strike May Day 2028. Look, I mean, if these are things that people want, this is time to get organized. And, Sean Fain's a very serious guy. So when he's talking about other unions getting organized so that their contracts expire on May 1st, and I just want to reiterate that for people who haven't followed this story, heard this, the UAW contract is going to expire on May 1st. The demand from the UAW, or the challenge, the call from the UAW, is for other unions to negotiate their contracts to expire on the last day of April so that workers can go on strike on May Day across the country. And this is something, if you're familiar with terms like class struggle unionism, if you're familiar with the work of Sam Gindin and people like Leo Panich, these are the kind of innovative moves that have been sort of called for by the socialist movement for a long time, is to start coordinating the labor movement more than it has been in the past. So that you can have things where you're not just sort of going up against the auto industry or the shipping industry, but actually having the entirety of the working class movement standing together and making demands collectively. It's an incredibly exciting development. It's a serious one. Um, it's been a kind of a shame. And look, I'm happy that people are excited about these things. And I always want to be careful to not be sort of seen as a scold or to tell people that what they need to be doing is settle down. But it's been a very frustrating thing, particularly with a lot of newer leftists or things like that, where they'll say, "Oh, we need to do a general strike next month," and it's just like like totally in the the general scheme of things. Yeah, what we need to do is to have working class power organized and being used collectively, but it's an easier thing to say than to do. And a lot of the people who are very adamant about these kind of things oftentimes aren't really engaged in the work that would actually make something like this a reality. So hearing somebody like Sean Fain talking about connecting the labor movement together is incredibly exciting. And we have something from Franz Kafka who says, "Y'all should cover some North Carolina stuff. Chapel Hill has a lot of interesting stuff going on, including housing, school board, and DSA. Check out North Carolina Triangle, the North Carolina Triangle DSA and Triangle blog as a first step, I guess." Yeah, I feel really bad. We had organized something over the summer to actually do a kind of political economy history of the research triangle. I don't know if I said Northern Triangle before. Sorry if I did. Of the research triangle in North Carolina. And I think we definitely want to do that. We just sort of have to respark those conversations to get some of that history, but also for all of our comrades in North Carolina, just to keep us in the loop of what's going on. We're always trying to be covering things and making sure, particularly people in the South, are getting more and more space to have their fight covered. You got a fun question here from the Vibe Train. David, how does NFL and college football work in a socialist United States? That's a problem I would really love to have to figure out. That's exactly, people always talk about what their job under socialism would be. I would love to be in charge of football policy. Um, I mean, I think the first steps of like professional sports in general is you would definitely want to see these teams not only being owned by players, but also probably owned by the cities and the communities where they operate in. So you don't have this kind of horror show where franchises are moving across the country. I mean, how many teams does Los Angeles have right now? Um, and it's sad. I mean, Las Vegas taking the Raiders was devastating. So you want to have more community buy-in and those kind of things, and you'd want those things to be worker owned. College football is a tough one to figure out what the best solution would be to make it as equitable as possible. Well, the obvious thing is to make sure that players are getting paid and they're getting taken care of. And I think the kind of marketing money and that aspect of college football, which is highly exploitative today, you would see that need to be challenged in a way. I'm just as a fan of college football, like you want to have it be a place where it's attached to these universities in some fashion. I think if you were living under a socialist system, the uh, the questions of how you're treating athletes, would certainly be a labor issue. I think there would certainly be some form of payment, but also an attempt to sort of protect, the accessibility of people playing at that level of football to be open to people who might not have intentions or the ability, frankly, to go pro. So the NFL, I think, is a very easy one to imagine what that would look like under a social system. I think college, you'd have to take somebody smarter than me to really figure out what the best solution would be there. Because like NIL, what they have in college football now is certainly not perfect. Um, but at least guys can make some money doing a commercial versus getting kicked out of school like they used to be. Jesus Christ. And thank you very much, Charles. Charles's ghost. He says, "Tip of the hat." Thank you very much, friend. All right. I mean, I know we want to talk Gaza. Um, I have a Texas story I want to get to, but let me make sure I'm not missing any questions before I start that. Green Bay, Green Bay. Somebody who knows Green Bay better than I do can sort of talk about it. Green Bay has like a sort of a sense of collective ownership, though it's a far cry than I think what we would want. Um, because like it's not run by the people who are shareholders in it in the way that we'd want under social system. But they banned the Green Bay model. No other team can do that, which I think shows how much of a threat it felt like for the ownership class. And I'll just say this, like on college football in particular, I think one thing that a lot of people miss, like why is college football so popular in the South? It's because for a long time, no owners and there wasn't an industry base. The South is historically much poorer than the rest of the country, so those universities were the place where where it was like the highest level of competition available for people, particularly in like the deep South. So there's a kind of historical reason why the South is so passionate about college football and high school football across the board. Justin says, just want to know, but I had to drop my Patreon because of financial troubles. No worries at all, friend. Just want to say thank you for what you do. Sorry you can't support us more materially. Appreciate that, and no reason to feel sorry. We appreciate support in any form it comes. I will say if people, ever are wanting to stay a member of the community, if you send us an email or a message on Patreon, we can usually try to find a deal for people to make sure that it can work for them. Patreon doesn't let us give out stuff for free, unfortunately. It's just the way that their system works. But we usually can find a deal if the $5 a month is becoming difficult for you. But appreciate it across the board, friend. All right, let's talk Texas for a second, then I'll come back and take some questions. How about that? Because there's a really important story we talked about a little bit last week with my friend and comrade Kevin Sanchez. But the Texas House wa- is back in session right now, and it's following the marching orders of Greg Abbott, who is a monster who is in Israel right now, by the way. Just another kind of embodiment of the evil that he supports and represents. But last week, there was a vote in the House to pass a slate of bills, um, three bills, HB4, that effectively criminalize being Hispanic in the state of Texas. And some people might not like that framing of it, but the way that this law is written, what it means, and what the enforcement of it is going to be devastating for a significant part of the population in Texas, and it would be the same thing even if it was a pure demographic a minority. But remember that Texas is not a majority white state. Um, and it's truly frightening and bizarre that the GOP thinks that they can continue demonizing our neighbors, significant portion of the state here. But it's been a winning issue for them. Immigration has been their kind of answer to any challenge that they have gotten from the Democratic Party in the state, and the Democratic Party in this state hasn't really been able to put forward at least on the state level, right across the state, running for offices like governor or things like that, a real answer to the Republican Party, which is extremely devastating and damaging because then you have shit like this. So, House Bill 4 is going to empower police officers to apprehend, arrest, or send back migrants who cross the border illegally. Remember, this is not a power of state police. This is a federal power. Immigration enforcement is something that is should be controlled by the federal government. So the state is already not just overreaching, but overextending law enforcement in the state by doing it. And the whole purpose of this is not going to stop immigration. It's not going to do anything other than terrorize our neighbors or friends, and people across the state of Texas. So this ability to apprehend and arrest people who are migrants, again, not a state power, is frightening enough. But in addition to this, it adds increased penalties for people who are quote unquote human smugglers. And what they mean by that is if you're driving in a vehicle in the state of Texas and you have somebody who is a migrant, who might not have documented status, you could face significant prison time. In addition to that, people who are caught crossing the border multiple times um, will face pretty stiff penalties. I believe something like 10 years. A number that has no real legal justification, no real scholarship. It seems like that originated from Governor Abbott himself. This also appropriates another $1 billion to these border barrier operations that we're seeing, which is again in a state that is regularly at the bottom of education, regularly at the bottom of healthcare, and has significant poverty. It's horrifying to see how much money we are spending terrorizing people at the border so that Abbott can go on Fox News and talk tough. So the bill itself is horrifying and it's truly disgusting. But the way that it was passed, too, was notable even for Texas, a state that is very famous for having pretty cutthroat politics, nasty politics. Um, what the Republican Party did in the House last Wednesday night, going to 4 o'clock in the morning last Thursday, was something else. So in this bill, which again has massive cost for the state, increases penalties for people, is going to mean more harassment and pain and suffering for Hispanic Texans. Even when the minority party doesn't have the ability to stop something from passing when it looks likely that it will pass. There's always been an understanding that things should be able to be debated, that people should be able to propose amendments, that the people who are responsible for governing the state should be able to govern, and they should be able to debate. They should be able to say their piece. They should be able to make the points that are necessary to be made. This was denied to them. Some of these amendments that were put onto this bill by the Democratic Party were simple things, right? Most of these people across the board, say for a few, oppose these draconian measures. But there were attempts to at least prevent some of the most egregious and now seemingly very likely consequences of this bill. Things like saying that, hey, we're not going to be putting children in prison. That was something that was off the table. Hey, we're not going to harass rape victims who come and report a rape to the police, or domestic violence or violent crime or theft or something like that. We're going to make sure that people feel comfortable going and reporting crimes against them, crimes against their community, to the police in Texas. Off the table, according to the Republican Party. And in fact, um, Cody Harris, Republican, blocked filing of amendments to this slate of bills that did, by the way, get passed. And there was a pretty heated and justified exchange between Cody Harris, again, a Republican, and Armando Wale, about what this bill means. And I just wanted to play it here because I think he says it, he's very human here and speaking the truth about what's going on.
Y'all don't understand the shit that y'all do hurts our community. It hurts us personally, bro.
Cody, just let us
It
debate
hurts
it.
us.
Just let us debate it.
It hurts us to our fucking core. And y'all don't understand that. Y'all don't live in our fucking skin. Y'all don't, man. And that's what pisses me off. I sit there. I've been a good fucking soldier to him.
That's right.
To my own fucking detriment.
That's right.
To my own detriment. And to cut off debate when all of our members are trying to have a debate, a civil debate. Nobody's gotten crazy. We're just trying to have a debate. Let the chips fall where they may. We know where the bill's going.
Yeah, we know.
Let us debate what we need to debate. Let us blow some steam. But that's fucking bullshit. I've been here 16 years. I've never seen that shit.
Cowards.
And he's absolutely right there. And I think him, there's a longer version of the clip where, he's talking about, like, what am I supposed to say to my children? Are you saying that I can't go to a baptism? Because again, this law empowers the police to harass and ask for papers and ask for people to prove their immigration status. And there's just no way to talk about this other than state sanctioned racial profiling of people, state sanctioned harassment of people. I mean, it goes arm in arm with the drowning devices that Abbott and the Texas government have been installing in the Rio Grande. That's a direct attempt to drown people, to make people suffer, to harm people physically. And this is an attempt to make people not comfortable living in their own communities. And again, just to be very clear, this and this is fucking Texas. What the fuck are we doing here? This is a state that is incredibly diverse, that has, a massive Hispanic population. In fact, the largest in the state. So we're about here saying here that we're going to empower police to be able to harass and harm people who not only, I mean, everyone has a right to be where they are. But people who have been here for 7, 8 generations, you're going to have them be harassed by police officers now in their home, in their community, in the only land that they or their family knows. It's truly despicable. It's undefensible. And you would just have to ask yourself, I mean, where and when is this going to stop? When are these people going to face some kind of political punishment for this kind of activity? Because again, it's bad enough to be directly attacking migrants in the way that they have. But now they're expanding that attack onto significant portions of the state's population. And Armando there is completely right in being in these people's face, talking in the way that he is to them. I mean, he says very clearly there, you don't know what it's like living in the skin. And that, that's a very powerful statement there because these guys don't. And there's a cognitive dissonance with a lot of these folks, particularly as the GOP has been making more and more attempts to expand their voter share in the Hispanic and Tejano community in the state of Texas. There's a cognitive dissonance when they sort of talk about, oh, well, now the Republican Party is becoming more diverse, this, and that. And we're going into special session, right? So not even something that's typically on the docket, something that this is an emergency protocol that we need to put in place, called on by the governor. To do something like this, it's truly inhumane. And again, this goes back to, I think, a fundamental reality here is that the Biden administration has been sitting on their hands as things in this state get more and more frightening. We had the state government argue in court recently that they believe that the state of Texas has the right to make journalists register with the state in the same way that they make plumbers or other professionals register with the state. Right? This is just an argument that they made in court about how broad they think that their powers are. But this is the kind of stuff. I mean, I'm very hesitant to utilize the word, the fascist word, not because I don't think that things are bad. I think that, for example, like neo-Confederate thought, there's a lot of things that are very homegrown American that are anti-democratic, right-wing, and dangerous. But I'll tell you, it becomes very easy to start using that kind of terminology when you see things like this, when you see the state basically saying, hey, yeah, we're going to harass people because of the color of their skin. We don't really believe in the First Amendment. And then you have a federal government that is basically saying, hey, we're going to sort of do ticky tacky questioning and lawsuits that are indirect. Remember, the Biden administration when they were coming at Greg Abbott for installing literal drowning devices in the Rio Grande. The legal argument that was coming from the Biden administration was, oh, they didn't consult the Army Corps of Engineers. No, fuck that. Greg Abbott is practicing mass crimes against humanity right now, mass crimes against human decency. And we need a much more direct confrontation from the federal government because this is a massive state. There's a lot of people that live here. And it's becoming very clear that Greg Abbott and the Republican Party here have no care for the state constitution and certainly not for the Constitution of the United States of America, let alone all the kind of basic things that make us human, like having general human decency and compassion for other people. It's bad. It's extremely bad. And you add into that, I'm sure people read my piece in Jacobin, these attempts to effectively ban local government in the state of Texas so that the only real power in the state is now the state ledge. There's a real clear and apparent war on human beings and on the concept of democracy itself happening right here in the state of Texas. So people like Armando have every right to be mad, and they need to have their voices heard. They need to have backup from the federal government, and also, for all of us on the ground, for the Democratic Party in Texas, they have to get their act together. Because sort of sitting and waiting, like has been the Democratic Party strategy here for a long time, and hoping that demographics are going to save you, that population changes are going to save you, and seeing election after election after election, that's not going to change the politics of the state. It is political malpractice at this point to be letting people like this defeat you election after election. The GOP is in the middle of a civil war right now in the state of Texas. And there should be much stronger challenges in these coming elections for state reps in the state of Texas. There needs to be much better recruitment and development of talent. And there also needs to be a much clearer message from the Democratic Party in the state of Texas, other than, hey, we're not those guys. We're not those guys. We're not those guys. Because that's been the Democratic Party's fucking playbook in this state my entire life. And we see what the consequences are of it. So Extremely devastating. We'll keep covering it. Reminding people too, I'm working on a very exciting media project with some friends and comrades that is hopefully going to be going live in the next couple of months, and that's going to be focused much more on the state of Texas. So, keep your eye out for that because it's becoming abundantly clear that we need a different kind of movement and strategy to break this power of these right wing ghouls who are pursuing some of the most damaging anti human politics I've seen in a long while. I'm going to go back to questions. I'm sure a couple of them will probably be about what we just talked about. I also have some clips from some of our federal elected officials on Gaza that we will play in just a minute. Daniel Burton says, and thank you so much for the chat, says, did you catch Michael Rapaport putting a bounty on young girls' heads for tearing down those missing Israeli flyers? I did not see him individually, but I saw other groups doing that. Michael Rapaport is a low life, a shitty comedian, and if he's backing these kind of attacks on people, a true monster. I mean, you want to talk about danger, the danger that we're seeing from freaks like Rappaport, from anti-democracy groups in this country, from groups that deny the humanity of Palestinian people. I mean, there's a real attempt to try to demonize folks. And let's talk real for a second. After a child was murdered for the sin of being Palestinian in this country, the weakness from what we've seen from elected officials in this country, the weakness that we've seen from media leaders in this country, and from the fucking cowardice of people like Michael Rappaport and all these other freaks who are having a field day um, attacking and harassing people who are saying, hey, don't bomb children. Hey, we don't think that bombing children, millions of children, is a good thing. This guy coming out there and deciding that what he's going to spend his time on is not calling for an end of the slaughter, but rather, hey, maybe we could harass to Arab appearing, Muslim appearing folks. Disgusting, disgusting little freaks. Thank you, Champagne. Call me for the chat too. Says super tuned out of politics right now. I completely understand that. But I tune in when I can, and thanks for keeping up the great work. I appreciate that very much, friend. All right, let's see if we got any more in here. Let's see. So I'm just going down, making sure I'm not missing anything. All right, I'm sorry. I scrolled down, so I might have missed some of these questions here. Jesus Christ. All right, a quick mood shift from our good friend in Australia says, just man, making me say these things on microphone is not good for my heart. But our friend from Australia says, just want to give a big sickum bears for our beloved Baylor Nation. Really excited for your Texas show. Thank you very much, friend. Just going on this public utility says, then the Southern strategy. I might be missing what you were in reference there too, but I wanted to talk about this second bit here, saying the Confederates have never had this much power, and there's a couple things to note. Is that one? I think contrary to the imagining of the Confederacy, The Confederacy, I mean, and is it surprising to anybody that the fucking slaveocracy, the people who left the United States of America in order to preserve their ability to own human beings as property, weren't actually proper believers in the concept of democracy. But despite this kind of popular understanding of like, you know what, yeah, the conflict might have been about slavery, but there was also a real fight about states' rights and local control and small government. The Confederate States of America and its very, very and thankfully brief period implemented a centralized system of government that would have made any kind of right wing autocrat blush. The Confederacy was a system that almost immediately curtailed democratic rights, certainly for the enslaved, but also for just citizens of the Confederate States of the U.S. So just want to be really clear here because there's always this. I'm not saying you're saying this, but there's this kind of false narrative about the Confederacy being like, yes, a racist government, but also, was principled in the sense that it like maintained some small government, all these kind of things. That's bullshit. The Confederate States of America was a top-down um, project that eradicated tremendous amounts of social and individual rights for people. Is the complete opposite of what some of its defenders say it was. But there is a fundamental reality going on in Texas right now, and I've written about it in Jacobin. You can read. I have a longer piece on Greg Abbott called "Greg Abbott is the most powerful governor in Texas's history. That's bad for working people," where I sort of outline the centralization of the government of Texas that Greg Abbott has successfully been able to achieve since he's been the governor here. And a lot of people, it gets missed sometimes because understandably we focus on what he's doing with this power. But he's fundamentally changed the role of the governor. I mean, even going back to that 10 years thing, we're talking about the punishment for being the punishments outlined in HB4 here of 10 years. People were asking, hey, where does that number come from? Is that just an arbitrary number that y'all came up with? And I'm forgetting his name, but one of the Republican House members uh, who proposed the measure said, "Oh, well, that's what Greg Abbott told me to do." And look, the governor has the ability to sort of put pressure in politics, but it is extremely notable the way that the House GOP and the Senate right now are just sort of taking marching orders from the governor. That doesn't even get into things like Operation Lone Star, which, in my opinion, is unconstitutional under the Texas Constitution. The way that Greg Abbott used COVID-19 to centralize power by implementing an emergency disaster declaration. You never heard shit about that from the COVID liberty freaks, be they on the right or the left as Greg Abbott was using COVID-19 as a justification to harass people at the border, to supersede local government, clearly in violation of the Constitution of the state of Texas. Never heard anything about that from the right wing. COVID skeptics and COVID liberty people, nor for all the niche lefties who were talking about the expansion of state power. Very clear example of that, if that's your argument going on in Texas. But oh man, might be a little clear that a lot of those people freaking out were less worried about government overreach and more upset about being asked to do something like wearing a mask. I've not heard the new Beatles song. Sorry. Oh, I always forget this. Technical issue on Twitch. You might need to change the title from Baldur's Gate. Yeah, I guess that's why people have been watching on Twitch because that's 18 plus, I think. On that note, I think me and Arm Brown are going to play Baldur's Gate again tomorrow night, which is Friday, November 3rd, if you're listening later. So come by on Twitch. What is it? Twitch.tv/Left Reckoning. We had a lot of fun with our first stream, and Dave from Jamaica joined us for that. So it'll be a lot of fun. All right, y'all. I'm gonna hang out for a little bit longer. Let's do a quick rogues gallery here. um, of some freaks who are supposedly here to represent us. Let's start with this contemptible figure, Hakeem Jeffries, somebody who, why you would support him, I have no idea. Here's him talking about the bombing of a refugee camp in Gaza.
So did you think that Israel violated that law today in attacking that Palestinian refugee camp in the hopes of killing a top Hamas leader?
I'm unfamiliar with the particulars on the strike, and so I'll reserve judgment, but I know that Israel is taking every effort to continue to conduct this necessary war following the international rules of warfare, and I would expect that it will continue to do that.
So again, it's caution when we have a video, images. Caution is needed, right? We don't have all the facts. When Israel leaves a massive crater in a refugee center, something that they have bombed now multiple times. They are continuing just mass slaughter, mass harassment, mass terror against the Palestinian people. But this is not a time to talk fast. We got to wait till we get all the facts. Yet when Israel comes up with lie after lie with no proof or anything like that, accept that wholeheartedly. But when you have just visceral images of the bombing campaign in Gaza, we got to take our time. Just a disgusting figure. And, I know I've said this multiple times, but there's an aspect to this that this stuff really does make you feel crazy. Sit here and have the president of the United States deny the death toll of Palestinians, to have the leader of the Democrats in the House saying that, oh, he's not going to comment on something that is absolutely a war crime, and talk out of both sides of his mouth saying, oh, I don't know anything about this. I support Israel. And I've been saying to them, hey, y'all do the right thing. I trust you to do it. When time after time, we see attacks on children, the mass starvation campaign against the people in Gaza, the slaughtering of journalists. Now multiple journalists have been killed by Israel, and now multiple bombs have been dropped on these refugee camps. It's unconscionable, and at a certain point, it makes you feel. I mean, your first emotion, obviously, and should be, um, your heart goes out to the Palestinian people who are just facing this onslaught. And then, just how the hell do we live in a country right now with supposedly free media, where these people are able to get away with this bullshit, talking out of both sides of their mouth, straight up lying in the way that we are regularly seeing from elected officials on this? It's truly something that it's hard to wrap your. We know why, right? Like, look, I'm not a fucking babe. I'm not some deer in the headlights. I know why they do it, but it's striking to me how confident they are, and how little pushback that they get for this kind of activity. And on that, let's talk about somebody who needs a tremendous amount of pushback. None other than the most slovenly dressed John Fetterman, who people I'm sure saw, violently had a constituent thrown out of a restaurant for asking him a question about why he doesn't support a ceasefire and the end to the mass slaughter of children. Here's him being interviewed by, I believe, Mike Elk of Payday Report, about what he thinks about the current conflict.
You say you came out that you're against the ceasefire. Why is that?
I am really about making sure that Israel is able to do what Israel deserves to do. And I agree for the death of any innocent civilian, Palestinian, Israeli, and whatever it is. But right now, I want to make sure we're concerned with making sure the hostages are back home and that we are able to neutralize and eliminate Hamas.
I saw yesterday that you wrote on Twitter, somebody had posted outside of Taylor Alderdice High School some graffiti that said Free Palestine. You said this was reprehensible. Why did you object to it so much?
I think it's because, doesn't that be said, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. And I don't believe that whatever message you're able to make shouldn't be vandalized on a high school in the middle of Squirrel Hill. And the appointment and the statement that I want to make is about, to me, really, it's very much about the hostages and getting them back home safe.
So you think it's inappropriate to have pro-Palestine? I mean, there was recently a number of surviving congregants from that congregation that went to the West Bank that spoke out against the occupation. I'm Jewish. There's certainly many people in my family that are against the occupation.
Sure.
I mean, what do you feel about the Jews like myself who feel that we're doing onto the Palestinians what was done onto us?
Reasonable people can have different opinions on that. I've been very clear on mine before I became senator as a candidate, and everybody understands how I'm going to come down and vote.
I support Israel to do what they deserve to do. Now, obviously, it's very clear. He's struggling to express himself, but it doesn't take a detective there to figure out what he's saying. And what he's saying is he thinks that Israel has the right to bomb children, to starve millions of people, to displace folks, to utterly decimate Gaza. And to engage in collective punishment of a people. I mean, a truly despicable and disgusting thing to sit here and say. It's incredible that these people don't get any flack for saying things like, "Hey, they want the hostages released," and yet they are supporting the bombs that are undoubtedly killing hostages right now. Bad fucking guy. And this kind of game that has been going on in the progressive movement for a long time of saying, oh, well, you know what, some people, they might be progressive but they might not be progressive on Palestine. We're all seeing that for the canard that is, and how dangerous that kind of that game is, right? I mean, this is a very clear moment when you're seeing the vast majority of the American population now say that they support a ceasefire, that we have almost no representation of our voice in the Senate in particular. Not only is the United States not advocating for peace or advocating for a ceasefire or anything like that, we're tripping over ourselves in a divided government to make sure that we can send more money for Israel to use on bombs to murder more Palestinians. Truly despicable. John Fetterman has shown himself not only just to not be an ally, right? I think it's almost quaint to talk about John Fetterman as an ally of the progressive movement, certainly of Palestinians. But it was revealed himself to not only not be an ally, but to actually be a bloodthirsty champion of one of the most horrific human atrocities we've seen in a long while. Disgusting guy, and I'll say it again. I usually try to leave him out of it. His staff has been extremely nasty as well, harassing peace activists, posting ridiculous statements on Twitter, sort of trying to wash their hands clean of the mass murder that their boss is supporting, and by extension, they are. Truly just a despicable group, and pretty disheartening to see. We'll get some more questions in here. We're going to keep covering this and we're not going to stop. Don't get me wrong. But it's getting to the point where it's just like, what else is there to say? What else is there to say about this? We are watching in real time, a mass slaughter campaign against a people who are held in an open air prison, people who are starving to death slowly with the American blessing. And that'd be horrifying enough, but the Senate is voting to condemn peace activists, college students. We're getting lies from elected officials on a regular basis, and then these kind of full-throated endorsements of the mass slaughter campaign. I mean, it is just again, like, just to be clear, it doesn't baffle me in the sense of like I'm like a political newcomer and I don't realize why they do it. But it's striking just to see the shit in real time and the excuses that we're getting here. But we have a question from David. Good to hear from you, friend. He says, "Is there a risk of the UAW pre-announcing their intent to strike on May Day years in advance? Wouldn't it be harder for other unions to coordinate their contract expirations if bosses expect it?" I mean, this is an interesting question. I mean, I think on one hand, I don't think it'd be a kind of tremendous thing for uh, a company um, to try to be really hard on the contract negotiation expiration date to do this, and I think that that would probably only infuriate membership in the unions in the first place. So probably would be a tactical issue. I think if a company were to be like, "Oh no, you guys can't strike on this day," but also, I mean, the attempt here is to make this a line item, a demand, because like let's say he doesn't announce that that's the intention, and it's sort of whispering about it. I mean, these guys have the ability to uncover something like that. So I think coming out with the intention in advance sort of weakens the position of the companies. But it's an interesting point. I tend to say it's actually better to make these things public and clear to the masses, especially if you're trying to build up support. Just because if it wasn't publicly announced and they had a suspicion, you could see companies maybe trying to draw a hard line. It will be much more unpopular and difficult for them to do that when it becomes clear that they're basically trying to break this solidarity here. Fire says, "Can we start our own fake university and call it John Brown University? But why make it fake? Let's make a real one." Lorada says, "Is that a cowhide chair behind you? My dad, who did his master's degree in Texas, has one that just looks just like it." It is. It's something I inherited from my nana after she passed away. She had a lot of fun taste in furniture and things in the house. All right, let's see. I can maybe take one or two more, and then I'm gonna have to run, y'all. We have a bonus episode coming up this Sunday. Just a reminder, we're doing part 3 of our Communist Manifesto reading series. Part 2 is up for patrons. This will be up for patrons. Part 1 is open to the public. So check that out if you haven't seen it, and sign up so you get access to that. The Marx reading series are some things that I really enjoy doing with Matt. So really excited to release that on Sunday for everybody. I think no better time than right now to start talking seriously about that kind of stuff. All right, let's see. Maybe one or two more if there are any. If not, I might run. All right, folks. I think that I could just I'm just listening to these fucking people. It makes me sick. It's endlessly disgusting. See these half-assed things. The Biden administration, oh, they're now very worried about Islamophobia, whatever the fuck. It's bullshit. They have been stoking the flames here. Um, I'm sure people saw the attack ad against Rashida Tlaib that came out from DMFI, Democratic Majority for Israel. Remember that a lot of these pro-Israel groups effectively operate as arms of the Republican Party. Even before this, their main targets have always been progressives in way that help out the right wing of the Democratic Party, and also certainly the Republican Party. Truly, truly disgusting commercial. If you haven't seen it, it's not doing anything to kind of tamper the Islamophobia and attacks on Palestinian Americans and just Arab Americans in general. Just every single lesson that you thought that liberals might have learned from 9/11, man, that might have been optimistic to think any were learned, has just gone out the window the past few weeks. It's truly a dark moment, folks. I appreciate all of y'all so much because maybe to end on a positive note, um, as difficult as things are right now, Seeing the support from the American people, seeing these protest movements in cities all across the country, in New York and Philadelphia, seeing what we saw in London, that should give you some spirit and hope for a different kind of world. Because the one that we're living in right now is cruel. I mean, the one that we're living in right now, where mothers are holding their dead children in their arms. Where I'm sure you've seen these videos of doctors who are working beyond the limits, human limits, finding out that their kids were just admitted to the same hospital where their entire family was wiped out by an Israeli bomb. I mean, you can't look at that and feel despair for humanity and the world that we've created. And I understand that and I feel that deeply. But I also think we should always make sure that we are remembering that despite all these things, that there are plenty of people, everyday common people, who are standing up and saying no and pushing back, and don't ever let them rob us of our humanity, and hope and belief in something different is a huge part of that. And there's a lot of attempts by the state of Israel, by the United States government, by corporate power all across this country to try to rob us of our hope for the future, to rob us of our very humanity itself. And never let them pull that from you, because we always have to have um, a belief in something better for all of us. Thank you all so much. I'm going to run. Appreciate y'all. Be back this Sunday with a bonus episode on the Communist Manifesto with Mr. Matt Leck. I hope you all are there for that. And thank you all so much for being part of this community, and looking forward to talking to you soon.